flight, we are go for launch. T minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. This is Navigating AI, hosted by Rich Wilson, guiding business leaders through the new intelligence era. Let's explore how AI is reshaping business, leadership, and the world.
To Navigating AI, where we guide business and HR leaders through the new intelligence era. Today's episode is titled Hot Mess HR, the most common people problems and how to extinguish them. When people problems turn into a hot mess, the costs show up fast: turnover, disengagement, manager burnout, and culture drag. Retention is not a mystery. Most of the time, it is leadership habits, day-to-day communication, and whether the employee experience is intentional from the first hello to the final goodbye. Today, we are making that practical, and I'm joined by Leslie Spies, founder of Influence HR Consulting. Leslie spent nearly 30 years in corporate HR before launching her consulting practice, where she helps leaders build workplaces where employees stay, grow, and thrive. Her work is built for organizations that need strategic HR and organizational development support, often in the 20 to 200 employee range, where HR resources can be stretched thin. A few of her flagship programs include the Employee Experience Blueprint, Performance Management Redesign, and Habits, the High Retention Manager Program. Leslie is also the author of 3 books, including her most recent, The 7 Habits of High Retention Managers, a practical guide designed to give leaders tools they can use right away. Leslie, welcome to the show. I'm really glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So for listeners meeting you for the first time, what's the short version of your story and the work you do today?
Okay. Well, you heard from the 30 years. My career is not short, but I'll give you the short version. So I had been in corporate HR for almost 30 years, and about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more now, I transitioned to working for a recruiting firm, and part of what I did was to launch a HR consulting division, which resulted in me launching my own consulting firm about 3 years ago, Influence HR Consulting. So during my career, I had been in various roles, a lot of different industries. So I'm not a millennial, but I made job hopping cool before the millennials came along, which kind of serves me well now because I've worked across industries and have pretty much touched every function within HR over the years. As I mentioned, my consulting firm is called Influence HR Consulting. I help small and medium-sized organizations build workplaces where people want to work, essentially. So I focus on, you mentioned some of the different solutions that I have, but I focus on doing fractional HR projects, and then organizational development work. So typically when I begin partnering with a client, I do a bit of an assessment, whether it be the Employee Experience Blueprint or something maybe a little bit abbreviated, to find out kind of what their needs are, and then we customize a plan based on that.
So what do you most enjoy working on? The culture side, the leadership side, or the HR infrastructure side?
Okay, that is a great question. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I like a little bit of all of it. If I had to pick one, I would combine 2 of those and say the culture and the leadership side, because I think that they're very interrelated. Some of the HR side tends to be a little bit more tactical than what I enjoy doing. At this point in my career, enjoy more of the strategic work. So I think that's probably why I gravitate more towards the organizational development, culture, leadership work.
One thing that jumped out at me is you've written in 2 different lanes, but they actually connect. You've written 3 books, 2 in the Christian nonfiction space, and then your leadership and retention book. How does this connect
Yes.
to the work you do with leaders today?
Okay, that is a great question. Well, just to let you know a little bit about my books in the Christian nonfiction space. The first was called Confessions of a Hot Mess From Mess to Message, and it was kind of a devotional format book. And next was From Hot Mess to God's Best, Decluttering Your Mess to Be Your Best. So I don't know how well, being branded as a hot mess does for my corporate career. I will assure you that I'm not a hot mess in the business HR space. But I think kind of a common theme is that I am willing to be authentic and vulnerable in any space. And, with the Hot Mess books, I felt led to share my struggles to help others and to kind of help them feel affirmed that it is okay to have struggles with things like comparison and guilt and shame and all the things. And by sharing my story, I felt like I was helping others to better their lives. Similarly, in the business space, had to kind of articulate my why. It's kind of two pronged. So the first is to help others to meet their God given potential, which I think I was trying to do on the hot mess side. And then the second part is to help create workplaces where people will stay and thrive and meet their potential. So I think that is kind of how it all ties together, maybe a little bit convoluted, but hopefully you get the idea.
I do. So, what did writing the earlier books teach you about coaching, clarity, or communication?
Yeah, that is a really good question too. I have always enjoyed writing. Did I ever envision myself writing a book? No, I did not. I wrote, some articles and white papers and toolkits and all that good stuff within the HR space. But I just kind of really felt led to do this. So I started by blogging, and then I was like, "Oh, I have so many blogs, it could be a book." So I think it helped me to be more clear in my writing. It helped me and I was already pretty good at this, I think, but taking information from different sources and assimilating it and distilling it down. It helped me to do that. All three of my books were written before AI was mainstream a thing. They probably would be a lot better if AI had been in place when I wrote them. Anyhow, so I did it all me, and, editing and really trying to make sure that I was communicating clearly.
Let's get into your signature lens on the employee journey. You use the phrase hi to buy for the employee experience.
Mhm.
What do you mean by
Yes.
that? And why does it matter more than leaders realize?
Okay. So hi to buy means from the time that the candidate first meets you through the time that they leave the organization, whether that be voluntarily, retirement, or being offboarded. So, really, every stage of that journey is important to an employee's day to day experience with work. And I do want to kind of differentiate between two terms. Employee experience is all of the things that the employee experiences during their journey with an organization, whereas workplace culture is kind of the environment in which that happens. So it's everything that people think, say, and do within an organization. So I prefer to focus on employee experience because it's a little more specific and less nebulous. So if you have culture, you may decide we need to improve communication within our culture. But if you're looking at it through the employee experience lens, you really know at what points communication is breaking down. So I'm not sure if that fully answered your question, but that is kind of the difference. And that's why I am really focused on employee experience.
If a
Okay.
leader listening wants to self check quickly, what are the first
Uh-huh.
one or two things you would look at?
Yeah. So I actually, on my website, have a little employee experience assessment that they could do to kind of do a self check. It's like 7 or 8 questions. So it's fairly simple. But to do a self check, I would think through the feedback that I have gotten. Hopefully, they've asked for feedback and gotten it along the way through things like exit interviews, through interactions with employees and meetings, and try to find those things that seem to be kind of themes or pain points from across those different formats.
Yeah. No, I misread it. You said something on our prep call that I think a lot of leaders avoid thinking about until it's too late. What are the most common offboarding mistakes you see, especially during layoffs? And what does good look like?
Okay. So I'll answer it more generally, then I'll get into the layoff part of the question. So, one thing that I see during offboarding, which happens more often than it should, is that a lot of times people are caught by surprise. So, they haven't received sufficient feedback of what exactly they are not doing that isn't meeting expectations along the way. So, I think that is not really fair to the employee. And it also can kind of put you at legal risk if you are not well documented on the reasons why you have chosen to terminate someone. So that's that piece. On the layoff piece, I tell you what, layoffs are tough no matter how you slice it. I think the most important thing is to treat people with dignity and respect throughout the process. I think sometimes companies jump too quickly to decide that they need to do a layoff before they have exhausted other options like cost containment, process improvement, things like that, because layoffs do a lot of damage to the employees that are left and takes a long time to rebuild. There is another way to get to where you need to go. Financially, I would encourage looking at those things. If you do need to move to a layoff, I think, being sure that you are being fair and consistent in making those decisions is important. And then thinking through the best way to communicate that information in a way that helps to preserve the employee's dignity and plans for how you are going to help the survivors that are there after the layoffs take place. So, how are you going to communicate? How are you going to support them going forward? And I find that that is missing a lot of times in the process.
You tied offboarding problems to what happened months earlier. How do organizations
Mhm.
end up in situations where someone is terminated and they're totally blindsided? And what should leaders be doing earlier to prevent that?
Think communication is key. Asking employees for their feedback is important. So, before somebody makes a decision to leave, typically you're going to see some signs if you're really watching, because they are probably going to start to disengage. If they're a high performer, they're maybe not going to offer to take the lead on things. There are definite signs, and I think it's important just to maintain that regular communication. One thing I find is that most managers don't do a great job with one on one meetings. I think that is a great opportunity to really engage with your employees and kind of have an agenda. So start it by checking in with them personally. Of course, go through any updates, but ask some coaching questions as a part of that. What do you feel like's going well? What are you struggling with? Is there anything that's frustrating you? How can I better support you? And then act on those things that you can. Another strategy that can be helpful is, and some of these questions could be a part of that, but doing stay interviews periodically, where you don't wait for the person to decide to leave and then do an exit interview, but you do a stay interview and just ask them some questions. Say, how do you want to grow? How can I help you? Those kind of things. So I think that is, and certainly, there are other components I outline in my book, Seven Habits. I think they're all important. Um, really just maintaining that communication, asking for feedback, and showing employees that you care about them. I mean, really, for me, there are three basic human needs when it comes to work. Once you meet a certain level of salary and benefits. So, one of those is feeling like they're valued. So, making sure that employees know you value them, helping them grow and develop, and feeling like their supervisor and their organization cares about them as a person and that they're not just a cog in the wheel. So I think if leaders are really focusing in on those three things, that they'll be in a much better place.
This is a great bridge into your book. What motivated you to write The 7 Habits of High Retention Managers? And what gap were you trying to fill for everyday leaders?
Okay. My book is focused on, as the title says, it's focused on creating a workplace and leading in a way that people will want to stay with your organization and hopefully will grow and thrive. And as I said, that's really kind of a part of my purpose. So I had been doing leadership development workshops for years and it's evolved over time. But what I found was that similar to my hot mess, as I developed the workshops, I was like, I could put this together and it could be a book. Sounds a little bit easier than it turned out being. And I should have known better by the time, I got to writing this one. But anyhow, it really is almost kind of like a workshop in a book. So I think it really provides some practical strategies and frameworks. There are tons of leadership books out there, tons of leadership information, but I tried to write this in a way that it was more simple and practical and not a bunch of theoretical information on, how you lead.
Let's give our listeners the start here version. Your 7 habits
Okay.
are ignite purpose, build trust, manage yourself, be a good coach, practice accountability, communicate well, and show you care. If you had to start with just one habit that moves retention the fastest, which one would you pick and why?
Oh, that is such a hard question. A little bit of it depends on the workplace culture and your team and all of those things. But I think that one of the things that is critical for any leader, and probably most critical, is to have some level of self awareness, which is the foundation for managing yourself. If you cannot manage yourself well, then you can't manage anybody else well. So nobody likes the leader that's like constantly freaking out and, the rest of the team follows suit and freaks out or who is yelling at people or perhaps goes passive aggressive. So learning some kind of self-awareness information around what your triggers are, how you can thoughtfully respond rather than reacting in situations, how you can step away and practice a pause when you need to in order to handle things in a better way. I think that's really foundational. The other thing that I would say is tied with that, if I'm allowed to do that, is building trust because without trust, you don't have anything as a leader.
Now let's bring AI into this because managers are using it whether we
Okay.
like it or not. You mentioned that
Uh-huh.
when you were
Yep.
pulling everything together for your book, the leadership research that ChatGPT was not quite a thing yet. Today, AI
Uh-huh.
is everywhere. Where can AI
Uh-huh.
genuinely help managers improve retention or leadership effectiveness, and where should it never be used?
Not the expert in this area, but I will give you my opinion.
Okay.
And I will say, I love AI. I probably am a bit of a novice. I mostly use Chat GPT. I've used a few other things, but Chat GPT is like my best friend. I've used it to coach me. I've used it for workshop summaries. I've used it for outlines. I've used it for lots of things. So I think it can be helpful. It can help you to be more productive, but for a leader, the personal relationships are really what is most important. So I think it is fine to use it to help you kind of generate thoughts, to, provide agendas for meetings and things like that, but is not going to be a substitute for personal interaction and it should not be used as such. And you don't want to be sending a bunch of communications and emails that people know came from AI that have a lot of the M dashes and all of the AI kind of things. And I'll be honest, I use it to help me write some blog posts and things like that. But then I take it and I personalize it. So I think just being conscious of that, that as you're communicating, it's okay to use it as a tool, but it should not be the be all end all. I am hearing that people are using it as a tool for performance reviews. I don't really quite get how that works. If you have a show that talks about that, I'm ready to hear it because I'm not sure. I think it's probably, sorry about my dogs. I think it probably takes information from different sources and helps you distill it down and can be helpful in that way. But I would not use it as, total substitute for things that you are viewing and seeing in terms of employee performance or interactions or things like that. Did that make sense?
Yeah. So if a manager is using AI, say to draft
Mm-hmm.
a performance conversation outline or interview
Uh-huh.
questions or onboarding plans or even internal communications, what guardrails do you recommend so that it does stay human, fair, and trustworthy?
Yeah, I think reviewing it with the lens of, does this seem authentic? Does it seem like something that's me? Does it get the point across that I want it to get across? And just kind of making sure that you're not just taking what AI does and implementing that immediately. You need to kind of look at it through the human lens.
Okay. Now, for the HR pros that are listening, you've also built a community and a broader blueprint. You created the
Hmm.
Badass HR on the school platform. Who is it for?
Right.
What kind of support are you building there?
Okay. Well, your listeners are going to think I'm crazy between the hot mess and the badass HR hub. I am not your average HR
Mhm.
person. The badass HR hub is a community for HR departments of none, one, or few. So, what I have found, several times in my career, I have been the department of one or few. And it can be very challenging because you have stuff coming from every direction. You're dealing with the employees, you're dealing with the managers, you're dealing with the quick questions all day long, all of those things. And it is easy to get overwhelmed. And particularly for somebody who might be newer in HR or newer in their career that doesn't have some of the knowledge of how to handle issues and, seen different things over the years in the workplace. So I built it as a way to find community so that people can go out there, ask questions, share discussion points. I also share resources. So I'll share things like templates and toolkits. I shared a little video like this past week on the 5 C's of accountability. There is a classroom on the school platform. So I have a free membership, which is the baseline. And with the free membership, there's lots of tools that are available there. There also is a premium where, if you're a small business, you need a handbook template, you need any of the forms you might need to manage HR. You may not even know what you need, but it's all out there. So it really is just, to support folks that are in that space to help them hopefully move from surviving to being in a good place. Actually, is not very old. I started it back in October as kind of a pilot and closed out registration at the end of October, opened it back up again this month for some more people to join in, and we'll do that periodically.
Okay.
So it's working out pretty well so far. I'm not getting quite as much engagement as I would like. As with LinkedIn, there are some lurkers out there that I feel like are looking at the information, but they're not engaging in the discussion. So hopefully over time, we'll get some more of that.
Okay. You also mentioned your employee experience blueprint. It's brand new. You haven't promoted it much yet.
Uh-huh.
So tell us what it is and what does it help organizations see that they usually miss?
Okay. Right. So the employee experience blueprint is, really I talked about from high to buy.
Hmm.
So it is an assessment of what you're doing at every level of the employee experience, gathering feedback from your employees. So a lot of organizations will do a survey to get feedback from their employees, and they'll use that kind of as the only data point. This is much more comprehensive than that. And, also incorporating some like interviews with leadership and things like that to get a full picture of kind of where you are and identify what would be most impactful to prioritize in terms of the things that you need to do to create an engaged workplace. So, what I was finding is that a lot of times people would come to me and say, I need team building or something like that.
Mhm.
And when you drill down, it really wasn't team building that they needed. They needed to reform the boss department. So I had many instances of that. I had a similar solution in place. It just wasn't quite as comprehensive. So I have created this new solution. I'm really excited about it. I think it could be very helpful for an organization, particularly without a large bench of HR staff. And even if they do, a lot of times, if you're closer to all of this, you don't see some of the things that would be more obvious to somebody coming from the outside with a neutral perspective. Sure. Yes.
What does a good
Okay.
outcome look like after a company goes through that blueprint?
Okay. So I think a good outcome would be improved employee engagement, reduced turnover, maybe less drama in the workplace, if that's something you could measure. A lot of times, what we would do as a part of that is put together, if they don't already have one, a bit of a HR related scorecard. So that is what you would use to kind of measure progress. But I think for the most part, a lot of times when organizations go through this type of thing, it's because they want to improve, be a better workplace, reduce turnover, reduce disengagement, which is pretty much rampant in the workplace right now. It's at an 11-year high, last I heard. So, um, I think there's lots of opportunities.
Before we wrap, I want to make it easy for
Mhm.
people to connect with you. If a leader is listening and thinking, we need help with retention, culture, or leadership, what's the best first step to work with you? And what does a typical engagement look like?
I am very active on LinkedIn. So I would love for you guys to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Leslie Spees. My website is influencehrconsulting.com. So I have all of the information out there. And you can look at the various solutions that are offered. And there is a button you can schedule a meeting that way. You asked another
Yes, I
question as
was
part of that.
asking, what does
Okay.
the typical engagement look like?
Okay. Yes. So the typical engagement would be scheduling a discovery call, just kind of talking through what you're struggling with, what you would like to improve as a result of the engagement. And as I mentioned earlier, typically what I would do is something potentially like the employee experience blueprint, if they're open to doing something comprehensive. To really figure out what do we need to do to make the most impact within your organization. But I also could do a bit of an abbreviated version of that. But I think it's important for me as a consultant to know what your practices are, what you're doing, what you're struggling with, what's going well, in order to best serve you and help you select what's going to be most helpful to you.
Okay.
And that's even with fractional HR assignments where I kind of serve as their HR contact because they don't have anybody in house. I think it's important from that perspective because it helps you know what are the things that we really need to start with. And maybe they have no onboarding program. They're just kind of bringing people in and throwing them into the fire. So that ends up being one of the first things that we work on together. Or perhaps it's their manager have never been trained and they got a lawsuit. Unfortunately, a lot of times, something happens that's the impetus for contacting me. I would much rather people contact me proactively, but that happens sometimes. So just kind of understanding where they are and where they want to go is important.
Okay. So, what's been working best for you lately to grow Influence HR? Is it referrals? Is it workshops, partnerships?
Yeah, I wish I had a great answer for that. It's been a little bit of everything. So, as I mentioned, I've been in business 3 years.
Mhm.
I really thought I'd have it all together and know what I was doing about running a business by now, but I really don't. It's hard. It's hard to figure out what to offer, who your ideal client is, and all of those things. So I would say referral partnerships have been very helpful.
Mhm.
Client referral, LinkedIn to some extent. I think, being visible is important. I have an email newsletter. So, if people know who you are, they will think of you when something happens that maybe they decide that they need some additional support from outside their organization.
Is
So I think just staying visible is important.
is there anything that you've tried, Leslie, that you've decided this does not work? I'm not doing this anymore?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. One is networking. So when I started out, I decided I'm going to partner with all the chambers and go to their leads groups and things like that. And that was not very helpful. I did meet some really neat people. But the thing is, with a lot of groups, it's more business to consumer, where I'm business to business. So I had to kind of pivot my approach to networking. I'm part of a networking group that meets mostly virtual, but I started a chapter in North Carolina and it's a B2B group. It's Success Champion Networking, but they have chapters across the country and in Canada. And that's been really good, helped me to connect in the B2B space. And also sometimes just starting your own thing. So I did start that group, but I also started another group. And then that way you're able to fill the group with your referral partners and people that you'd like to meet and help them find others that they would like to include that would be useful to them in their business. So I think networking is a big one. I think, one of the things that I have tried to do is offer training classes more generally for just kind of open enrollment for people anywhere. That does not seem to work very well. It works better when I partner with a company that decides I want to bring somebody in to do leadership training. So that's been another learning, but there have been many along the way. And I still don't have it all figured out.
Okay, tell us one more time. Where should people go to
Okay.
find you, and what's the best way for them to reach out?
I think the best way to connect with me is probably on my website, influencehrconsulting.com. There's a button where you can schedule a time to meet or you can, look at information out there. Also, if you want to email me directly, it's leslie@influencehrconsulting.com.
Thank you. Leslie, this has been practical and refreshing. Thanks for being here, and thank you for the work you're doing to help leaders build teams that actually stay.
Thank you. I've enjoyed being with you on the podcast, Rich.
Us too.
Mission accomplished. This is Navigating AI. Subscribe for more insights into how AI is transforming business, leadership, and the world. Until next time, stay curious, stay ahead.